Hey guys, welcome back to the Ask Muso podcast. As you would have already seen from the title of today's episode, this is one that I am very excited for because there's a lot of questions that I could ask, a lot of questions that people have asked me to ask you. But essentially, Dicko, say g'day, mate, and introduce yourself. Kick us off with where you want to start.
Oh, I just want to start by saying how thrilled I am I'm here to sitting here with you, Bailey, talking rubbish about music or whatever comes our way.
Yeah.
And right off the top, you can ask me anything. Nothing's off limits, mate. So if you've got any gnarly questions, let's have them. Only one thing, I'm allowed to answer them in the way I want to answer.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, okay. Yeah, sweet. Well, I suppose, where does it all start for you, travelling around where you started to now?
I'm from Birmingham in the West Midlands, like a big industrial city. It was still is the second city of England. It's the most landlocked city away from any beaches. And it's the home of the car industry. Both my parents worked on the conveyor belt and in factories on cars. And yeah, I was a music mad fan from an early age. Both my parents were into music. My sister was one of the first punks in Birmingham in the mid 70s. And I used to nick all of her records and drive her mad. And, you know, and that was probably my musical awakening was punk rock. Like 1976, 1977, Sex Pistols, The Clash, Susie and the Banshees. And that was so thrilling for a kid to be waking up to music, to something, a movement like that, where it's about self-empowerment. You know, you don't have to be rich, you don't have to be connected, you don't even have to be good at playing your instrument. You just got to have an attitude and have a crack. Yeah. And it was like DIY pop music.
Yeah, because it was like, look how you want, sound sort of how you want, and then if it's...
Dress how you want.
And if it's different, well, that's the point, you know.
And it was just amazing that to be alive and a teenager at that time, sneaking into punk gigs with my older sister and... You know, because those were the days before ID cards.
Yeah. So what's the difference between you two?
2 years. So
okay,
she was older, 2 years older than me, but she looked a lot older. She was a girl, and she just presented a lot older. But the other thing was, it was mad. Even at the age of 14, if the bouncer was a bit shit or you were with a big crowd of people, you could get into a pub to go and see a gig.
Yeah.
Even at 14 and drink beer. You know.
Yeah, because once you're in, they're not checking after
exactly.
that.
But he's like, it was these days. Everyone's so fixated on if you're not 18, you're not coming in. Yeah. It was loosey goosey in those days. It's funny. I was telling someone the other day, I'm a mad Birmingham City fan, and I used to go to every home game. And I was telling someone the other day, at the age of 13, midweek on a school night, I went to Liverpool from Birmingham on a train to see Birmingham play in an FA Cup replay. And got home at 2 a.m. and went to school the next day.
So just you. So you just went to the football by yourself.
Me with three other mates. Four of us, all 13, all like a school day. We had to bunk off early from school, go to the train station, hide our uniforms, and then and just go to Liverpool for this cup tie. Imagine letting your 13-year-old kid go to another city on a school night.
Yeah. Oh, that's... Yeah,
what bad parenting, yeah.
So that's where it all started then.
No, so look, I was mad keen on music, and
so was she a player? Just to interrupt, was she a player or was she just loved it? She was
just a mad fan and a record collector, and her boyfriend was a punk, and he was super cool and a real face around Birmingham.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, I was sold at that point. I was intoxicated by music then. I used to... Another thing that's hard for people to get their head around today is back then, mid-70s, there in the UK, there were 5 weekly dedicated music newspapers. What? So, and there was The NME, Melody Maker, Sounds, Record Mirror, and Smash Hits for the pop kids. But there was also heavy metal magazines called Kerrang, like DJ magazines. So music was massive in the UK. If I try to explain to people, music in the UK is what sport is for Australians.
Okay, that's such a great likeness.
So music is front page tabloid news in the UK, whereas it's really easy to see Todd Carney and the Bubbler being on the front page, and the talk stations, or Willie Mason or Sonny Bill Williams, or any footy player can be on the front page of the papers.
Yeah.
Whereas in the UK, any musician can end up on the front pages of the tabloids.
I think
because it's big news.
Yeah, I think I sort of experienced that when I started getting into like the musical history of things, which was history to me, and Mum introduced me to like very much 80s music and that sort of 80s pop, and like the other night, John and I were supporting with Delacombe, we were supporting Boom Crash Opera. Mm-hmm. That was as much of a coup for me as it was for Mum and Dad, because they raised me on that sort of music. But then I look back at old things of the Sun and stuff, and Robbie Williams and the like nasty things that are, following people around, being in bins and all that. And I was like, see, that's like, Scott Pendlebury might have a second wife and Collingwood Football Club are going to go to the ends of the earth. That's the equivalent, is that, Robbie Williams blew his nose and it was the front page, Yeah,
it was massive. And that it's funny you mentioned Robbie Williams and take that, because the other thing about British music is that that's very different to Australia, is that rock and pop are very easy bedfellows. See, over here, you're either a rock fan or a pop fan.
Yeah.
You can't be both.
Yep.
Whereas in England, you'd see Robbie Williams hanging out with the Oasis boys, and the Oasis boys, Liam and Noel, would completely understand the value of a top 10 pop artist.
Yeah.
They wouldn't rubbish them because they'd go, fair play to you. You're having a hit. And that's the thing, because in cities, no matter what your musical taste is, even though I was a punk, I'd go to discos to meet girls.
Yeah, of course.
And so you'd have to know all the pop tunes.
Yeah. I suppose there's a relationship there, like, because as you would know, I play in both sides of that, and it's both sides of that. It does feel that separation. It doesn't feel like that. Like, what I'm trying to do in Sailing in Space is trying to meld that with more of a rhythm section with pop vibes. But you're right, it is a bit of it's very much a separation.
Yeah. And look, and we saw that as well. There's been like some super groups in the UK, even in the indie scene, like Electronic, which had Bernard Sumner from New Order, and Johnny Mars from the Smiths, a legendary 80s band, playing with Neil Tennant from Pep Shop Boys in this band called Electronic. And they were three. Neil Tennant was an absolute pop icon. Would never ever regard himself as indie or left field or alternative, but found himself with New Order and the Smiths Illuminati making great pop music.
Yeah, I actually just finished reading Rick Astley's book, and he mentioned those sorts of things, and he was mad Smiths fan, but he's like, it took me until I was like 47 before I ever played any sort of song in front of people that sounded anything like what I used to listen to growing up.
But also, I mean, Rick Astley was from a hit machine called Stock Aitken
Exactly,
Waterman.
And that's the thing. The whole Saw Records thing was very much, we churned out this scope. This is what we churned out. Yep.
Yeah.
Bananarama.
Yeah. I mean, they did heaps and heaps and heaps of hits.
Yep.
And they had Stock Aitken and Waterman had a system that worked for them, a sound at the time that sounded like British top 40 music. And Rick Astley was the T-boy in the studio.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, he was literally making sandwiches and just filling in when things happen, sort of thing. Starting in the dark studio with the Night Squad, because he wasn't with the main boys.
I remember he'd had a hit with obviously,
Never Gonna
Give You Up. And I think it was about maybe the year after that, I went to the RCA label Christmas party.
Okay.
And this was when I joined the record industry in the 80s. In London, there were 33 major labels. So, and put this in context, today there are 3. So today there are 3 major labels. When I joined the industry, there were 33. And each one of those labels had its own offices, its own A&R team, its own promotions people. Like, it was the record industry was massive in the 80s. And I remember going to the RCA Christmas party and getting pissed in London in some club somewhere. And Rick Astley was there, absolutely off his nut. And I remember I was having a drink with him at the bar, and then Rock the Casbah, the Clash came on, and he went, "Oh, fucking hell, it's going go and have a fucking dance to this. Fucking great. I love this. And I remember just sort of half walking, dancing onto the dance floor.
Oh, yeah.
Like in the most camp way possible
Yeah.
with Rick Astley to dance to Rock the Casbah by The Clash. And I thought,
so good.
little did I know at that moment that you go, wow, this moment will be an iconic moment for me in 40 years' time. So.
Well, that's a cool thing I want to sort of pass on. You mentioned, like, you know, he's a guy, and then suddenly you're like, oh my God, he was the guy at that point. What has, to skip ahead a lot, what has your experience been in being someone that was like stealing your sister's records to someone that people have really gravitated to and looked up to and had such a positive experience with on the other end? On the other end, sometimes.
Sometimes positive. You are aware of my persona in Australian Idol.
Yes, exactly, yes.
I was an arsehole. Look, there's two streams to the answer, I guess. The first one is from a working class council estate in Birmingham. Nobody like me worked in the record industry.
Yeah.
That was not an option. Most of the guys that I went to school with ended up working in the car industry and factories.
Yeah.
Right, until that fell over in the late 80s. And all the car industry, all the car factories closed down. But yeah, it was not an option. I didn't know anyone who worked in the record industry. I didn't know that was an option. And I kind of fell into it I met my wife now, who I've been with for 40 years. She was a publicist, and met her in Bristol while I was a window cleaner. And we ended up sort of seeing each other, and I used to go to London to stay with her, and that was the most exotic thing for me because for a regional British person, London is cool as fuck.
Yeah.
It's like their clothes are better, like, you know, they're cooler. Everything, the houses are cooler, the buses are cooler. Like everything about London, when you're from the regions in England,
was the bit.
In those days, you feel like you've just like wandered down the yellow brick road to Oz. It's amazing. So yeah, I found myself on the fringes of the record industry. Even then, didn't think that was available to me. But yeah, I just bit by bit just gravitated into that universe and felt comfortable. I suppose because I never, you know, I just got carried along, really. I was always a sort of, yeah, I'll do that. When someone asked me if I could do something, I'd say, yeah, sure. And that's a great sort of lesson to teach young people these days. You know, and I don't want to sound like a miserable old fuck saying, but I must admit these days it is rare to see that can-do attitude.
Oh, and that
and I have to say, that's why I'm sitting here with you today, because I really love the way you carry yourself, Bailey.
Appreciate
and
that.
you are one of the people that I completely look up to in terms of on the scene in the Sunshine Coast, what you do, the way you carry yourself, the way you put yourself about. You're a total credit to yourself and your family. And that's why I'm here today.
I appreciate that.
Because I wouldn't come down the hill for many people.
No, I appreciate that. We were chatting about that at Summer the other night. You were saying, like, look, I don't leave the mountain very often, but he's like, but it's nice to see when there's a bunch of like-minded people in here that you know the relationships are still strong as ever, and it's lovely to catch up with everyone. So that means a lot to me.
Well, anyway,
I really
look,
appreciate that.
no one like me works in the record industry, so
There's a sort of appreciation.
But also, no one like the big one was no one like me was ever on television. So it's a double whammy. I ended up in the music industry, and that was a head fuck because sometimes I'd be driving in my company car from my lovely house in a Surrey village, like commuting to London, a director of Sony Music in my Mercedes, and I would be driving down the King's Road and I'd catch sight of my reflection in a shop window around Sloane Street, and I'd go, how the fuck did this happen? Look at me, I'm a director of Sony Music, I'm driving a Mercedes-Benz, and I'm going into my big office in a record company. And I go, and I'm from Birmingham, from a council estate, and that was sincerely humbling from time to time. But I never, ever thought I'd be famous and on television because I grew up revering television as much as music. 3 big things in my life: football, music, and TV. They were 3 cultural icons, pillars of my life.
Yeah, for sure.
My team,
Yep.
like my music and television.
Yeah.
Because that's how that was the common language you had with your mates: football, music, and TV.
Yeah.
So if you weren't across all three of those, you were like hampered
you were
socially.
out.
Yeah. So I never thought I had no discernible talent. So I didn't think I'd ever find myself on television. Reality TV was not a thing. You had to be an actor, a performer, or a serious celebrity to be on television. And I ended up being on TV, not only on TV, but on the biggest record-breaking television show in Australian history. And that was mental, because I was 40 at the time as well when I went on television. So I didn't grow up with it. I had to adjust from being a saggy sort of like older bloke with a midlife crisis and a dad bod, being on television on newsstands and like 30-second promos over and over again every time you turn fucking Channel 10 on. So yeah, that was a head fuck, I'll be honest. But yeah, I'd already had a bit of a cataclysm with me going, oh God, I'm in the record industry. But yeah, TV was the big one. So I had those two big shocks in my life: record industry and being famous. You know.
Yeah, I suppose the whole introduction to that, you didn't. Maybe you did radio stuff in the UK.
Nothing. No, I was a record exec.
So you were just the behind the scenes. So it was never.
I was a faceless suit in the record industry.
Yeah. So really nothing. So when did you move?
We moved to Australia in 2001, just after the Olympics. Moved to Sydney.
For any particular reason?
Yeah, moved with BMG Records to be general manager.
Okay.
So I went to BMG in London. My last job in England was I was vice president of international for UK and Europe, and I was also ran the RCA label for about 6 months as part of the BMG group. So I was a suit. I was on the board. I was I used to go to New York once a month for big worldwide marketing meetings. Go to all the managing directors' conferences around the globe, would sit on, on these big budgeting meetings and, steering committees for the company. And yeah, it was a big job. And in the end, I was kind of keen to change things up. And when we got the opportunity to take the family to Australia for 3 years, went, yeah, let's do it. So came over here, and then the first year I came over, Cal, who I used to work with in London, he started a pop idol.
Yeah.
And then they brought it over here, and they needed a bastard.
Okay, so that was like the job description.
Yeah, of course.
It was, dot one prick.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
look, part of the show, part of the format of the show is that ritual humiliation. Where and look, people don't realise this, but we in that first and second year, we had tens of thousands of people queue up to audition, and people would sleep overnight. Like they'd be out queuing in the street for like a day and a half, and it was huge. And they would have to go through 3 auditions before they came to us.
Okay.
So because you can't film everything, you can't film 10,000 people.
Definitely.
So we used to be able to, 3 judges, me, Mark, and Marsha, used to be able to get through 100 to 120 a day, right? When we travelled around, an audition, a single audition, we'd get through about 100 of those a day.
Okay.
Say, but in order for them to get to us, they had to go through 3 auditions. And that whole process, those 3 auditions before the cameras were switched on them, that was designed to take the middle out.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people who can sing, and so what? It's not really about that. It was about finding people who could give us some telly, who had some ability to sell records, but more importantly, could create television. So they took all the middle boring bastards out.
Yep.
And the only ones who came before the 3 judges were the very, very good and the very, very bad.
Yep.
So even before I opened my filthy mouth, we knew what was coming.
Yeah, so that was the brief.
Yeah.
The brief was you're going to get
some idiots.
both ends of the bell curve.
You're going to get some great talent, and you're going to get some absolute tuneless bellends.
Yeah.
And at that point, please don't hold back.
Was that the brief to everyone, or was that the brief to you?
It wasn't. No, it wasn't even the brief to me. It was a nod and a wink.
Okay, yeah.
Do you know the funny thing is I did a screen test where they put 10 people in front of me, and I was just myself, and I didn't realise what a prick I was. Even in the screen test, I think someone walked out crying, and I felt really fucking bad about it that night. I was talking to my wife about it. I went, I don't know if I can do this, because in the record industry, you're just not used to telling people the truth. You're really not used to telling people the way, about their shortcomings. We lie. We say, look, I'll give you a call. No, I promise. I'll call you. Yeah. It's a fucking lie.
Yeah, it's yes and. Yes, love that. However, yeah.
No, so look, it's like I was just not used to telling people the truth. So after that first screen test, I got back in touch with the producers. I said, look, I really didn't like that. Could I try another one and try something different? And to their credit, they went, yeah. So they got 10 more people, set up another screen test, and I was super supportive and constructive, and it made me feel even worse. Because even though the taste of blood in my mouth was a shock to me from being brutal, it didn't feel as bad as lying to people.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And I thought, even then I thought, oh, this is going to be a hard ride. But I got through that first series and it became massive. Funny thing, Bailey, the next year when we started our audition process for Series 2, which was even bigger, on the first day of auditions, the night before, I don't know which town we're out of Sydney, the first night of auditions, I lost my voice and I couldn't speak. And I was like, what's going on? I can't speak. And the next day, turned up to auditions and it was fine. But the weird thing is that happened every single year from then on in. Every single year I started Idol, and the night before the audition started, my voice would disappear. And it had to be psychosomatic. Yeah. There had to be something there deep inside of me, some tiny scrap of decency, waving a white flag saying, don't do it. Don't do it. You're worth more than this. I was like, shut the fuck up. I'm famous and I'm getting paid shit tons. What do you know?
No, what you
Get back in your box.
What you actually said was, how famous? Oh, you signed it out. No, that is crazy though. That's great. And I suppose it's interesting that thing where there's the unknown, where you get the first of it, and the first of it's always whoa. But then when it goes bonza and you get that Shannon Knoll, Guy Sebastian rivalry, and it zing. I can only imagine like when it's already 10,000 people and it's people staying 3 weeks of a night to try and get an interview just to look at you. The next year to be bigger than that is...
Yeah, and do you know the funny thing is, even now, I look back on it, I think, I do feel a little bit, tiny hint of regret or remorse or shame for the way some of those people were treated in Series 1. Less so in Series 2 onwards. Because I just think, you fucking saw Series 1. It was the biggest show on TV. 2.5 million people tuned in every week.
Yeah.
It was a cultural phenomenon. It broke all records, right? You've turned up for the second year and you're complaining when you get it between the eyes?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
You know what? It's like, what did you miss last year?
Yeah.
And the problem is that what happens is people refuse to believe they're in that category.
Yeah.
They go, I'm not here for TV. I'm a good singer. I'm not one of those people. And we actually had people say that. People, by the series 3 or 4, the contestants know what's going on. They know the script. They understand backstories.
Oh, yeah.
They understand tears. They understand how to play the shrinking violet who comes good when the big notes start flying around. They understand how it works. But the surprising thing to me was many of them, when you said, no, I'm sorry, you're no good, they go, no, you don't really, I'm not one of those people. I'm one of the good ones. I was put through as a good one. And you go, were you? Were you really though?
Yeah.
And it's like the look on their face that they go, oh my God. And so that was, as I say, I had less sympathy for anyone who turned up from Series 2 onwards. But but at the end of the day, it's still a show that trades in cruelty, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and also that ever more so now when we look at what we understand of reality TV and The Voice and things like that, and it's like, I grew up and when I was born, all my legs were broken and stuff. It's like, cool, I can see that this is, and people take the piss out of it now, that it is a joke, that it is like, the backstory, what's your backstory, stuff like that. And the talent almost becomes secondary to that. Do you feel like you were at the cusp of when it was actually, I know there was, the two ends of the bell curve, but you were actually at the talent focus?
Well, look, yeah, except we did have some incredible backstories, not least Shannon. No. Shannon came to us with a straight back, but he looked a little bit broken, and he was from the country. He's from Condobolin. 3 brothers who lived on a farm would finish farm work around 4:00, jump in the van, drive 4 hours to a town to play a gig for beer money, drive 4 hours back, get 2 or 3 hours late and be up on the header, driving around the farm, doing farm work the next day. And that in itself is a good story. Add to the fact that the patriarch of the family, Shannon's dad, was killed in a farming accident, and literally the next day, the bank foreclosed on the farm. Was like a tragedy, but also a tragedy that I think spoke to a romantic view of white Australia. Okay. About I think white Australians still have some sort of a romantic connection with people who live on the land. The rural Australian, the ochre, the outback guy.
Yeah.
But there's kind of a strong connection to that. So Shannon's story was incredible for that, to underpin his incredible talent as well, and his openness and his desire to get on for his wife and his young baby. Living on drought assistance. That was an incredible story, especially when you see that as a dichotomy or a two-way choice between him and the new Australian, the guy who's half Malaysian, but also 100% like Aussie. Loves his cricket, goes to church. He's just a real sort of beautiful family, but ethnic. And R&B. And so whereas you had like Shannon doing the standards, the Barnsies, the Farnsies, those sort of real, those ochre bloke pub tunes, then you had this new Australian-looking guy who sounded very much like an R&B pop singer as well, which was the ascending dominant form of pop at the time in 2003. So look, I was suspicious of the backstories, but they also worked brilliantly well for that whole legendary first series.
Absolutely, and also as you said, it put it on the map in such a big way. Like as much as there's not, from your background of the sort of people you were dealing with and just the sheer numbers of people you were dealing with to Australia, it's a much smaller pond. So as much as the numbers aren't big, to be having, those like just barely sub 3 mil views, tuning in each week, that's a big deal. Like mum and dad never used to get in on the text lines and stuff, but we got in on the text lines, when it was Shannon and Guy up against one another and Ricky Lee and stuff like that, and Casey Donovan and stuff like that. They were on the text lines, and it was one of those things where I was like, I'd even seen a new side to them, because suddenly this world where obviously I grew up in a TV world, there was no other extracurriculars. It was about having something that was like, wow, it's music and it's TV together. That's wild. Because I used to watch Countdown and the Live Aid videos with Dad, and we'd watch the DVDs together, and I almost, my Santa moment was when Dad said, oh, that, when we looked at, what was it? I think it was maybe Kids in the Kitchen, and I could just see that the drum part he played wasn't the drum part on the record, and he's like, oh, it's recorded. I could have burst into tears on the spot. I was like, are you telling me that this is not actually what it is? And he's like, watch the real life one again and see how this could possibly be real. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so true. So this is what I was raised on. So then I have live TV. I didn't know about reality and drama and all that. I was just like, music and TV that's actually happening in the moment that's live. This is crazy to me. So it opened my eyes to a whole level of performance because...
And when did you first start getting into being a musician then? What gave you the bug? How old were you?
I got the bug as soon as I was in primary school and it was outlined to me what the courses were. You know, you had your start recorder and all this sort of stuff. Every time I would get into an instrument, I wanted to be the best at that. So I was like, I'll be top of the recorder class. I know it's painful to everyone's ears, but I'll be the best recorder class and I'll be respectful when mum and dad don't want me to toot it anymore and stuff like that. So because I was just ravenous just to get involved. I didn't know what I was good at. You know, it was recorder in grade 3, guitar in grade 5, could have extended to external instruments in that grade 5 area. And mum and dad sat me down and said, do you want to keep doing guitar or you're doing a lot of these ones around the house? And as much as it's a gimmick, you know, you're not half bad at it. And we bought you Guitar Hero World Tour and you started complimenting on the songs and then ridiculing the fact that the drum kit's not set up correctly on a PlayStation drum kit. Is this something you might want to have a go at? And literally sitting there, I went, yeah, I think guitar, I don't think that after 1 year I'm going to be the best at it. It doesn't come as naturally to me. And I may as well move on to the next thing. And it's literally the single most important decision I've ever made in my life. You know, because for me, there's no this, there's no moving up to Queensland, there's no where we're sitting right now. But there's also things like I don't meet Erin if I don't play music because I'm not in a band with her boyfriend at the time where I met her as a friend. You know, all these things that have happened because I ended up without knowing it, like you said with your situation where you just sort of rolled into things and things and things. I didn't know that I was going to be the only drummer in my age group for grade 6, for year 7 through to 12 pretty much. I was the only one in my year level. So I played for everyone.
It's so
and it
hard
was invaluable.
So hard to find good drummers, Bailey, as well.
Well, that's the thing. It was invaluable to me.
Your dance card would be full on the coast, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It is. And I love it because for me, I get to do what I love. But I've come from a background of doing it for everyone. And, you know, maybe playing Pumped Up Kicks by Foster the People 14 more times than I could have wanted. But then it's given me a tolerance to be like, you know, when I'm up there and it's 1:15 and we're doing Sweet Caroline for the second encore, it's like, it's only 4 minutes. Who cares? It's a bit of fun. I'm having a good fun with these guys up front, you know? And but then from there, I got thrown in the deep end. I didn't have to choose to, I don't play this or I don't really like that genre. I didn't have a choice. It was like, well, you're the drummer for the class. And sort of that baptism of fire, I think I've always tried to rise to that occasion because I didn't know that until later on that, as you say, drummers can be hard to find. I didn't really understand that. I just thought it was just a
They
school
never
thing.
used to be. It must be someone killing them. I don't know what it is, but it's like, it used to be 10 a penny, but these days, really hard to find a great drummer.
Yeah.
And it's so important for a band project.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think there's a lot of elements to things I've done in the past. I've done hip-hop groups and things like that, which are just, you know, a rapper with some great tracks and some beats, and we had some really good scratching DJs behind him and all that. But it's still just scratching the tracks to the thing with someone rapping over the top. And then the moment you do what Bliss and Esso did, that's what really set it off for me when I was in uni was like, and I ended up having Dan Kirby on the podcast ages back, but that whole setup that they have, it was, let's mimic that. That's rad. It's these awesome songs we've heard on our phones, but how much, or on our iPods, but how much better can we do it if we get someone playing drums and just playing the break beats? And
yeah, it's funny because, like, you know, I still manage artists and we still work with producers, and some absolutely fantastic world-class producers I work with don't work with drummers. They work with fantastic drum programs, right? But when it comes to that band playing live, even though, you know, you could do it on tracks, there's a physicality that comes with a drummer that you cannot do without in a live show, mostly. You know, most acts, you know, if you want something to be a visceral, physical experience, you have to have a live drummer.
Yeah, and I think I learned that when I was at uni from Peter Luscombe, from Paul Kelly's drummer. He said to me, he's like, he did a bit of a demonstration thing, and afterwards I said, I play drums and I'm left-handed, but I don't play left-handed and stuff. And we started talking about things, and I said, recording and getting into that. And he said, sometimes Paul would get me in the studio and I would literally just go and I just play hi-hat. He's like, the amount of times, so I could tell you more than a dozen times I sat in a studio on certain records for session work, for people you wouldn't even know and I played on, and my credit is hi-hat. Or my credit is drums, but he said I played the hi-hat. I sat in a room and I played the hi-hat because that was the one bit that with an 808 and a proper pumping, snappy snare, that was the one bit that was robotic. You know, they could get a big, heavy 808 on the 4, but of the hi-hat.
But most of these producers, they're real drum sounds. They're just recorded.
Yeah.
So they're just these amazing drum sounds from incredible rooms that they've been recorded and sampled, and you can have them in any way, shape or form.
Yeah.
You know.
And like recording MIDI, I was chatting to someone the other day about recording this just as ones and zeros for him to put his pack that he spent $500 on all these cool Nashville drum sounds. Rather than me spend all this time getting my drum kit to sound like a Nashville drum kit, you've already bought it. I'll just play the ones and zeros. You get the performance and then you just sync it up, you know, which is just a crazy technological thing even for me from when I first started. I didn't understand any of this world.
I still don't understand the studio world. So
yeah,
I tend to stay out of that. I'm just I hang around in the shallows, work with marketing and that sort of stuff. So
yeah, no, I get that. Well, from there, Sydney to the Sunshine Coast, it's a change of lifestyle. We moved from Victoria to the Sunshine Coast, but not doing what you were doing. Where's the change? Why the change?
Oh, look, I realised that media was coming to an end. I'd had a good run, 15 years, and I thought, and because media was changing, you know, all of a sudden, you know, TV was shrinking. And in order for me to keep doing that, I'd have had to have done a lot of stuff I didn't really want to do. Plus, like, you know, I think the country had moved on from me, which, you know, as I say, I've got no problem with. But yeah, I just thought probably need a change. And the girls, my daughters had left home. So we thought, where can we move to where they'll never move back in with us? And we chose a small dairy town in the hinterland of the Sunshine Coast.
Yeah, perfect.
And it's worked.
Yeah.
So it's just, me, Mel, the cats, and wildlife that she rescues and rehabilitates. So.
Amazing.
So yeah, it's I love it up here. We live in Mullaney, which is like a incredible town up in the hinterland, and I've got to a point where my world has shrunk to a point where I'm kind of happy if I don't have to leave. It's been a good week if I haven't had to leave Mullaney, and I'm kind of happy with that because technology as it is these days, I can deal with all of my clients and the world through virtually, and there's no issue with that. You know, it's bizarre. I had a band signed to a major label last 2 years. They're not in the office. It's like 3 days a week in a major label. You know, that's all that's required. So the vast majority of the time, you're dealing with these people at home anyway.
Exactly.
And you go, well, I might as well just stay up the hill.
Yeah.
I might as well just stay up the hill in paradise and not go anywhere.
Exactly. You didn't bother to get out of your way you're doing it from your living room sort of thing, so I'll do it from my office too.
So look, that said, I still think there's, sometimes you really do need that human interaction. You've got to put your hand on someone's leg.
Yeah.
And look them in the eye and just make sure they're for real.
Yeah.
And like sometimes artists, sometimes you've got to go out on the piss and bond with artists or just give them a real rollicking. And that's better done face to face where you can smell the fear.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's true though. Like there's something about having a personal connection. Like the amount of times, with the exception of ones that were obviously unable to be done, like my friends in Wisconsin that I've met through John and stuff like that, most people are like really excited to connect in this format rather than over the digital. It was different when I first started it during the cough and it was a means to an end, whereas now it's not required. Like I finished season 4 with someone from Melbourne who put it into his touring schedule that he does with a famous comedian so that he could swing by here whilst doing a show at Soul Bar. Because he's like, I know I'm in Melbourne, but I'm not in Melbourne this weekend. And I'm fucked if I'm going to go back home and then do it on Zoom with you and have a delay. Let's sit in a room. And he was keen for it. So we pushed it back and back and back just so that we could still find a spot where he could come here and do it this way.
No, it's great. I was I was thrilled to come down and sit here and be physical with you in the nicest possible
in the nicest
way.
possible way. I suppose I want to ask one thing, and it's regarding the Sunshine Coast thing. Did you come here thinking that the next stage of Dicko, the music guy, was going to stump, or was it sort of come to an end and you were just going to be like, oh, if something comes up?
I just wanted to live somewhere beautiful.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't know what I was going to do. I certainly didn't think I'd be getting back into music. That wasn't the plan. I thought that door had closed for me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny. I stumbled back into music by accident, and the more I got into it, the more I realised how much I'd missed it. Mm. And yeah, I got into artist management, and I don't know why the fuck I did that, because it is the worst job on the planet.
It's a mugs game, you said. It's a mugs game.
It is. It's like, and it's. I'm sure everyone's heard this, but it is. It's like it is generally providing the unnecessary to the ungrateful. It's unpaid charity work. And it's I mean, there's that. So it's it's an unholy amalgamation of the critically fucking self-deluded. It's like, and the worst thing is, I've realised most bands or artists to a certain level really don't need management. Mm. What they need is to get off their fucking arses and learn it themselves.
Okay, yeah.
And
that's that drive thing that we touched on.
Look, and this is why I've recently launched a music business coaching thing called Hey Dicko. I've been doing it for a while, but now I thought, actually, I would rather do this than manage a lot of artists. So I slimmed down my roster. I still got a couple of acts that I can't get rid of because I love them so much. Mm-hmm. One is a Sunshine Coast act called Lounge, which is Oscar Campbell. He's in London. He's coming back. But he's a guy who works his arse off, and he's so unbelievably talented. He doesn't realise this, but he is, and he's special. He's really special in what he does, and he's developing at such a rate that it's thrilling to sit there and watch that. So as long as he'll have me around, I'm sticking with him, and one other that I can't talk about, a new project, But beyond that, I'm really loving sitting with young artists and helping them discover what they need to do to show some resilience in the industry. And when it comes down to this, I don't know if you've worked this out, but there's 3 jobs a band or an artist has to do. Just 3 jobs, right? You got to write and possibly record good songs, right? You've got to rehearse those songs into a kick-ass performance live, and you've got to be good at telling your story, right? 3 things. That's all.
Yeah.
And there's not really anything else. There's nothing else you need to do.
Yeah.
There's other things you can say you want to do, but to be honest, most of that you can outsource. Those 3 things you can't outsource.
Yeah.
You've got to write songs. And I'm amazed at the amount of young artists who don't do enough writing. The amount of young artists I see who write a demo, fall in love with it and record it. You go, what the fuck are you doing? Seriously? You need to be, from the law of averages, you need to be choosing songs to record and to work and to market and to advance your career from around 10 to 12.
Yeah.
Not 1. And so, it's ludicrous. But a lot of young artists just don't write enough. They go straight to recording and they waste money on it. And
that's very true.
And getting artists to rehearse their shows, that baffles the fuck out of me. Why on earth that's a pain in the arse? I don't understand. Surely it's a joyous thing to be standing there playing music. And if it's a joyous thing, why would you not want it to be the very best it possibly could be? Yeah. And if these are people that you like and love hanging with, do you know who I reckon are just awesome at being a band in the Sunshine Coast? And I think they've got a way to go musically, but a band who will always never fail to impress me is Chamberlain, right?
Yep.
Because I look at them and I see their socials and I see what they do and I see they go on tour, and that's a band I want to be in. If I'm a young kid, I look at them and I go, you guys like each other.
Yeah.
You guys love this. I get the impression there's no plan B for you guys. You want to make this work. And there's such an unbelievable passion for what they do that I just go, I show them to clients. When I'm doing coaching with people around Australia, I say, look, get on and look at these people, right? You might not like the music, you might not be your thing, but trust me, these guys are good at being in a band.
Yeah, and they've got the three things. They communicate, because that's what I was always, something that I've always tried to share and apply in other bands I've played in. It's just a different way of saying what you said. It's songs, delivery, and communication.
Yeah.
If you're a 10 at drumming, but you can't communicate it as better than a 3, then you're a 3 at drumming. You know, it's the same thing. It's and they communicate it through the socials. But after having the boys on the pod and all this stuff, they fucking love one another.
Yeah,
and that's
shows.
unhideable because it's so authentic.
Yeah, it's you wouldn't begrudge them anything, because seriously, every time I look at what they're doing, I just smile because I go, "Fuck you! You're the band I would want to be in."
Yeah,
you know, that's great. You're like brothers.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's great to watch. And it's the other thing I see with a lot of young artists is I say this quite a lot. Amateurs are focused on results. Professionals are focused on process. And that's the big difference between young aspiring artists or not even young, but just aspiring artists who are developing who haven't got there. They're so fixated on results. And results are fickle things that don't belong to you generally. They belong to gatekeepers.
Yeah.
And you cannot, for the life of you, affect what a gatekeeper does or thinks. You know, you might be able to lobby them, but ultimately you're asking them, you know, to allow you into their business where they're next on the line. So they're not going to allow you in unless you're good enough.
Exactly.
Right? And the only way that so you're not going to get good enough just by knocking on their door.
No.
You get good enough by getting your processes right.
Yeah.
By writing more and more and more, rehearsing more and more and more, and learning how to tell that story really well in a compelling fashion and driving engagement. You know? And it's like, you know, it's... So look, that's kind of where my head is at these days. And look, it's a lot more nuanced as well because the world changes all the time. You know, we had the bombshell last week about, you know, the ban on social media for under 16-year-olds, you know, and that's going to be a little bit of a rocket for portions of the music industry as well. I was talking about a young guy called Taj Farrant, who's a blues player, who's I think he was on one of those talent shows, but he's a prodigy. He's an absolute young freak of a blues guitarist. Sells out shows. He's got like 120,000 Instagram followers, 155,000 TikTok followers, 300,000 YouTube subscribers, and a great business.
Yeah.
But he's 15. So we're in this ludicrous situation where he can spend a whole day filming content, like starring in the content, editing that content, doing the voiceover on that content, pressing post on that content, and then he can't watch it. Well, and that is just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Especially living in a state where the Liberals just basically said, you know, you do an adult crime, you're going to do adult time, but you can't fucking watch TikTok.
And that's the thing. It's like it's one of those things where it's like you have a movement on something which music is something that has never been gated by age, because that's never been a prerequisite. No. It's actively not a prerequisite to be of any age to be good at, introduced, a fan of music. That's so by putting in these visceral rules that are solely based on that, it's the most peculiar thing.
No, and I think for me, it's taking a sledgehammer to crack an egg. I'm not saying there is not there are not some serious questions that need to be answered with regard to young people and social media. I think social media has a lot more responsibility than it owns up to anyway.
For sure.
Certainly with misinformation, hate crimes, all sorts of stuff like, negative messaging.
Yeah.
Certainly for younger people. But I think it's a highly nuanced question that it cannot be answered by a blanket ban.
Yeah, yes or no, just a flat yes, no.
And good luck trying to stop kids getting on social media. Kids are the smartest fuckers when it comes to getting around those sort of bans.
Yeah, when I was a kid, it was 13 to be on Facebook, and everyone was like, I'm 13. So then you'd get to, grade 6, and everyone would be having, their 37th birthday because they forgot to change their birth date back when they turned 13. That was the thing then.
One of the sad things for me about this social media ban for kids as well is that there's 13, 14-year-old kids out there who feel they don't belong. There's 13 or 14-year-old kids out there who know they're gay, but they can't come out, who suspect they might be trans, but they have not managed, no way could they speak to their parents, don't feel confident enough to speak to their peers. And social media is a way for them to start testing out their tribe, to see where they belong on this planet, and to not feel alone.
Yeah.
And I think depriving kids of that is dangerous.
Since you sort of just got embroiled in this world that wasn't on someone like yours dance card, what was the plan B? Was there, if it wasn't this, what was it going to be? Was it going to be just car industry because everyone else was doing that? Like,
I didn't have a plan. I was the only person to go to university in my family out of the kids. My dad went as a mature student. That's another story. But yeah, I went to university, studied politics, and enjoyed myself. It wasn't a vocational degree. I didn't know what I was going to do. Ended up with a mate down in Bristol cleaning windows, cleaning office windows, and that was great because there's a lot of sex, and I was young and fit and straight out of university, playing lots of football, and life was good. I didn't have any plan. Honestly, had no plans at all. Who knows what it could have been? I don't know if I was destined. I think I've just been incredibly lucky. I think part of the equation for success is being smart enough to spot an opportunity and I think that's the difference. I think most people get presented with opportunities. It's only the clever, brave ones who go, oh, I might have a crack at that.
Yeah, okay.
And others might be a bit fearful, and the real dumb fuckers don't even see it.
No.
They're just, it's there barking at them, and they just go, oh, what? Somebody hears something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think people get given opportunities, but not everybody sees them.
No.
I must have been aware. I must have been very heightened to the fact that there was something else out there. Life can't just be about this.
Yeah, and I suppose, was there a strong and consistent form of support in your network where you never, I'm sure there's pushback, and obviously after the telly there was pushback, but was anyone saying, that's a stupid idea and don't do that? Or was it...
Well, what in particular? 'Cause I made a lot of...
did a lot of fuck-ups.
I've failed a lot. I've made a lot of money failing in media and music, so...
I suppose I mean when it was clear or, pre the Merc driving down the main street, was there a bit of, from mum and dad, was there something like, oh, you're going to do this? Are you sure?
No, my mum brought us up on her own, and she was a car worker. And I could have been a street cleaner and she'd have been happy for me. She was not one of those pushy parents. Whatever we did, as long as we were happy, she was happy.
Yeah.
She was just a benign angel, my mum. Never put any sort of any pressure on us at all. None. Absolutely none. No pressure to perform at school. Not that much pressure to go to school, if I'm really honest.
Sometimes we went in between the football matches, but yeah, you did attend occasionally.
But it seems like an odd thing to say because she was a great mum, but she didn't really see her kids as career kids. She didn't really see us as career. I don't think she'd even thought about what we were going to be. Thinking about it, I don't think we ever spoke about careers. Me and my mum never spoke about what I wanted to do.
Interesting.
You know, which sounds really odd to me saying that now, because it's the first time I've really even thought about it. But no, that there was no pressure in my family to be anything.
Okay.
There's none, and I mean zero.
Zero. Okay.
And that kind of was okay.
Yeah, and also because you had the have a swing attitude, this is why you've done what you've done. And I think that's the thing as well. It's like the attitude supports the altitude. You know, as far as you can go is as far as you can go. And if you couldn't give a fuck and you were actually happy
to be Anthony Robbins. Yeah. We're going to be walking on coals in a minute, aren't we?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, actually, this isn't plugged in. I actually have a headset. It's all headset work. There's a camera there. There's two there. There's actually one behind us. There's two outside.
Just tell me there wasn't one in the loo.
No.
I borrowed some of your cologne.
Which one did you go to?
Is in the
yeah, no. But well, you said you want to get physical. But besides the point, it's like that attitude thing. I think is a big thing because I didn't necessarily have pressure at school, but I had, there was a certain expectation. Wasn't completely no pressure, but I remember sitting in a course counselling meeting with mum and dad and other people from the school, and I was brought up, like you'll see when you leave, that I was brought up as a fiery kid. I was on dad's lap at as young as I was allowed to leave the hospital. He was a vol. He'd been involved with Baronia. He'd been a vol up on the peninsula where we lived most of my life and all this stuff. So I was brought up in fire brigade. So as soon as I was old enough, I became a firefighter, and that's just been such a large portion of my life and still is. And then you mentioned like the music thing as well that came sort of from school, and I wasn't going to football matches, but I was, you'd get a, house fire, make third alarm, and I'd get home at about 5:45 in the morning, and I'd get up for school ready for 8 o'clock.
How old were you?
16.
Wow.
And like 16,
and you've
17.
been fighting fire all night?
Yeah. Yeah, and I ever since from a young
Did your mates
recruit,
at school know that?
So yes, but I got bullied a lot for it. I got bullied very heavily. And I don't know if this is what your experience is growing up, but the tall poppy thing here is fucked, to be completely candid. And I experienced that heavily. I was top shit because you're a fireman. That's whole vibe. That was very much the thing. And I didn't understand it because I was so proud of not proud of what I was doing, like, look how fucking good I am. Just proud of the fact that I could go to school the next day after assisting my father and our crew protect life and property.
But you're making the other fuckwits feel inadequate.
Yeah, and I suppose
that's where I think he came
exactly,
from.
And those things became clearer to me as I grew up. But I suppose when I look back at that career meeting, I was in the program that did the jump ahead year in high school and things like that, and I said, this is what I want to do. Like, I love my music. I want to take it as far as I can. Maybe even start a uni subject in year 12. And when I finish here, I want to be a firefighter. We hadn't planned to move, but I was like, I want to be a firefighter. And she said, Bailey, you're in the Accelerate program. Don't you want to do something smart? Dad had to go out for a walk out of the room for a moment to cool down. And I just couldn't believe it. I was like...
So were you aware that was a real rude thing to say?
Yes, very aware. Because
she wasn't.
No, she's like, I thought you wanted to do something smart. And I just couldn't comprehend. I was like, wow, in the school system, it's very much book smarts and whatever else you want to do. And I was like, I think now I realize that was a moment when mum and dad could have maybe had a conversation or whatever, but they in the trenches with me. They were absolutely backing whatever I wanted to do. And not that this information was news to them, but they were like, they didn't see it as anything good. I'd never had anyone else tell me it was a smart thing to do or bad thing to do.
But have you noticed how it's swung the other way now? Now there's a skills shortage. It's because everyone, obviously Australia's got a lot of new Australians and immigrant population. And the mums and the dads come in and they're, concreters and cleaners and they make sure their kids work like Billy-O.
Yeah.
And go to university. So it's like there's pressure on kids to go to university now to get degrees. And we've got a massive skill shortage.
Yeah.
So the smart ones who are doing like apprenticeships are just raking in the money.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's people leaving university with psychology degrees who can't get fucking jobs, having to work in call centres.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing. You got the chippy that's just gone and signed the keys on his second house, and you're on your way to your shift at Coles. And there's no disrespect to someone who works there, but that's not what their bit of paper says. But no one cares what that bit of paper says. Yeah. And that sort of thing for me.
I thought you were going to do something smart.
Exactly. And I think about that whenever I go out and do a show, and we're talking about when you're playing Sweet Caroline for the third encore. But like, we were just playing a show with one of the bands the other night, and everyone there, whether they came from working on the tools, working in the office, not doing much that you could classify as work, they were elated that we were there entertaining, and we had a ball. And whoever was in the BY hotel was having a good time. They were all part of our family that night. And we all looked out for each other, and someone slipped over in the wet, and I picked her up because we were a family that night. And I was like, smart, dumb, clever jobs, not clever jobs. None of that mattered that night, because this is why we entertain. Because entertainment's so much more than strumming the chords or having a whack or anything like that. It's so much more than that. And that's why I now see so much value in what we do that I don't. That sort of mentality doesn't even.
Well, there's a comedian called George Carlin who's probably dead now, but an absolute doyen of old school comedians. But he said something once, which was that you can't measure a life by the amount of breaths that you take. You measure it by the amount of moments that take your breath away.
Yes.
And that is it. It's you got to measure your life in moments that just resonate with you in your heart, in your head, and probably in your guts. Anatomically speaking. Just those moments where you go, I'm feeling this moment physically. It's such a joyous occasion. Yeah. And I will never forget this.
Yeah, I was watching a video last night with Mum and Dad that they said it a different way. They said it's not about the amount of years in your life. It's the amount of life in your years. Yeah. And that's so true. There was about a 102-year-old who was traveling to Australia so she could tick off all 7 continents. It's those sorts of things where I love what we do in the community we have, and I think this is why I love doing this, is because I love. I remember saying on the phone to you that it's about me having great chats with great people, and I'm still waiting to know if you know anyone that I could get on, but it's about having great chats with great people, and this is moments for me. I get to edit it and look back at it again, and sometimes I'll miss that you gave me the bird halfway through or something, and I'll miss that, and I get to watch it again. But for me, I enjoy the conversations, and it's authentically me. When we turn the cameras off, it's the same guy. And I love that I get to see that from the people sitting across from me. And that's what is an extension of the playing and the bands and the recording and all that stuff. It's an extension of that. Because people, I don't think, ask, certainly back when I started this, they didn't ask the questions of the artists. And I think it plays into what you're saying about you got to be able to communicate, you got to be able to sell your story, your package, your sound. Some of the people I've spoken to that have the business don't actually know what to do here.
Well, they don't know what it is as well. I mean, getting a young act to understand the idea of their brand is really fascinating.
Yeah,
because there's a real inarticulate nature about most artists when it comes to understanding what they are. Who are you? What do you do, and why should we give a fuck? Really, what are you all about? What do you stand for? Yeah. And it's and that's that just seems to be the hardest thing for a lot of young acts to get their head around. But once they crack that, it tends to inform a lot of the other decisions they make, and everything starts to look a lot more coherent and punchy and attractive and lurid and a lot more energetic and colourful,
Yeah, absolutely, because it fills in all the gaps. It fills in the full picture. I got to ask, as someone that has worked with a lot of people and done a lot of things across the pond, if there's who would be someone that you would have liked to have had on your dance card in your time?
Well, I was fortunate. I worked with Pearl Jam from day one before they even had. In fact, we gave them their first ever hit around the world with the live. They went top 10 in the UK, and I went all around the world with them and got to know them really well. Was part of the team that went to Los Angeles, 6 people to sign Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters to our label.
That's
and
phenomenal.
so I got to hang out with those guys in Los Angeles while them and their management team sized us up.
Yeah.
And they signed to us and became great. And I've got a picture of me and Dave Grohl on my website, Hey Dicko.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and and look, worked with a lot of really, really great people. If I could have worked with, excuse me, if I could have worked with someone and been part of a campaign, I would have chosen Gorillaz.
Okay.
Yeah, with them. I'm a mad Blur fan. I love Damon Albarn. I think Blur are a genius band. But I think how he reinvented himself, how he liberated his own creativity, and how he just expressed his own musical generosity in that project was incredible. Like, you know, he created a bunch of avatars with Jamie Hewlett, the artist who created Tank Girl, and just through a lot of, he's like the leader of the orchestra. He's the ringleader, the ringmaster, if you like. But we've got people like Sean Ryder from Happy Mondays singing on there. You've got like Mos Def, you've got De La Soul. Occasionally you've got like the Syrian folk orchestra. You've got B-Boys, brass band from Chicago. You've got, when I saw them live in Sydney, you had Mick Jones and Paul Simonon, guitar and bassist from The Clash playing with them. So I think just to have a brain and a concept for a real ambition for music and creativity that Damon Albarn has had with Gorillaz has just been amazing to watch as a fan. And I constantly listen to their music and look at how it all hangs together as a brand and just an audio-visual experience. And I'm just in awe of his vision. And this is someone who was just a singer in a 4-piece band from Colchester. Like he was just a bit of a geezer mod band. Yeah. And a lot of and they did great pop songs. But some of their great music, like some of Blur's great music, is some of the more esoteric stuff, like albums like Think Tank, which is a bit sort of, people claimed it was a bit of an art wank album. But it certainly didn't have those tracks like Girls and Boys or Country House or Park Life, and he was a bit more arty. But I think as a forerunner to where his head was going with what was to be Gorillaz was just astounding for me. So I just I'm absolutely knocked out by that vision and that grandeur. However, I still love simplicity as well. There's an act at the moment called Slim Dan, who out of America, who's just a real lo-fi songwriter, but he just invests so much colour and social currency in every lyric that it's just thrilling to listen to. And as I say, there's nothing grand about the prospect, but it's just delightful. So, I can dig something as lo-fi as Slim Dan right now and just get down on my knees and worship at the altar of Gorillaz. Yeah,
okay. Yeah, I like that. That's a cool sort of connection of both worlds, like the ultimate like wow project, and then something that's just really nice and meaty to just get into. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and also I did have sort of an experience where I myself was sort of at a crossroads where I was thinking, do I want to do like songwriting, and do I want to get a bit more into it? And I started doing my own songs, predominantly just out of telling stories out of high school and uni and telling them to a soundtrack and things. And I found that that even though maybe the production value wasn't the best or whatever, having authentic songs and having something that was very true to me, very realistic, and I was able to more or less pull ideas that I loved and favorite bands that I loved without any expectation of, does this match in a record and all this stuff? I found that that's where I had my most fun. because I was putting it all together myself. I was playing all the instruments myself. And
it was just unadulterated creativity.
Yeah, it was just imagination to music, you know, but with the stories that I had lived. And I think that's something that when you talk about, you know, young people need to write more music. That I watched a video with Ed Sheeran where he said, well, and for me, it's when you open up a hydrant, when you're on the side of the road, haven't opened a hydrant in a while, you put a ground ball hydrant on. And because it's mains water, it's full of shit, like just full of brown shit and spiders and stuff. So you have to flush it for at least 5 seconds before the brown turns to clear, then you put a hose on. The poo water, this is that one song you took to the studio that you spent an amount I don't even want to talk about on, rather than letting it flush out. You know, and he said, look, you're going to have shit songs. You're going to have the shit shower. Let it run. And eventually you'll have some good ones. But he's like, let it run. Do a couple and go, well, it's shit house. And have a laugh at it at a party, and then move on to the next thing.
Do you know what? Something you just pointed out actually reminds me of another thing that I see a lot, which is with young bands or with bands, they get a song that they know is good, and they cling to it, and it stops them writing more and more stuff, you know. And it's and sometimes you go, you're gonna have to kill that baby, seriously, you know. You just need to write enough songs so that one that you actually love, you're never going to get to. But it's like, it's just they go, oh, but what about this? Go, well, it doesn't matter if it never makes the grade. That's because you've written better songs. You've got to. Sometimes you're just going to have to, open up the pipes, as you say, and just let this stuff flow.
Don't be so addicted to who you are or the songs you have today that you don't give tomorrow a shot. And I think about that when like I played in bands and we'd have songs and maybe we redo the intro and maybe we fix up the outro. Maybe that verse, we redo that too. And I was like, you've just written another song. Let's park this and just write that song that you want to write.
I still reckon one of the most powerful phrases in the record industry is "we shall see."
Okay.
Because nobody fucking knows. And it's like... And answers are just conceited, dead things. Questions are so much more full of energy. They are. You can live on questions.
Yeah.
Answers can keep you locked and tied down.
Yeah.
And it's like, and to be honest, it's only an answer for this moment in time.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
It might not be the answer next week. And it's like, but the questions, as long as you keep superseding those questions with better questions, that's forward momentum. That's where the exciting energy is creatively.
Exactly. And to look at questions and answers, like answers is, I feel like in this industry in particular, what you know could not be more limiting. To be like, oh no, this is the case. And I look back at old record things that I've gone, oh, I'm going to remix this. And I go, I've remixed it now, much better. Listen back to it, I'm like, oh, this is still fucking shit. But I was like, it's better than when I was in year 9 doing it. Like I was showing John a cover I did of My Generation, did it with a mate at uni. First year uni, I was ravenous for it. I'm flicking all the buttons and stuff. I did another go of it in 2021, fixed it up, made it a bit louder, rebalanced it. I recorded the drums with SingStar microphones. Like it was budget, but it sounds pretty good. And then I did it in 2021, gave it some more spice and went, now this is a track. And it's still not...
You're going to keep at it?
No.
You're going to keep at My Generation?
No, John has specifically told me that I'm not actually allowed to do it.
I love the idea that you do it every year. It's like you just keep on. It's like,
every 3 years. I do it every 3 years.
It's like rolling that rock up the hill. You know what I mean? It's like...
Well, it's like, do I record the drums again or do I keep the SingStar drums?
I just think... I don't know. We shall see.
Well, I think I might get in with the plugins and the knowledge and the many songs I've mixed and created.
People try to put us down.
And also, we were singing to a SingStar microphone together, doing the harmonies. And I was saying to John the other day that when someone's phenomenally talented in my presence, I start to giggle because I'm like, fuck, you're good. So we start doing these harmonies and we're doing 2 harmonies into the same mic. And I just go, I'm sorry, I've lost it again. And I just kept losing it because we were gelling on this harmony. It took us like 50 takes to get... Talking about my generation, just that over and over.
I think it should be like your musical Christmas sweater. I think you should put it on once a year I think you should have a crack once a year.
Okay.
And I hope it never gets finished.
Yeah.
I hope it's because, to be honest, what's the fucking point of you recording My Generation?
Exactly, because
There is none.
It was a hobby thing
It's the process.
Yeah.
It's like, do you know what? Let's get in there again and splash around and see how it feels.
Yeah, exactly.
I reckon do it every year.
Okay, guys. It's now on record that we're going to do it every year. We're going to do My Generation every year. Okay.
Why don't you? Oh, fade away.
Yeah.
Stop trying to dig what we are saying.
It's such a good and also the guy who had it, Sean Null, phenomenal vocalist. He nailed it. Got a really good like Greta Van Fleet like range with, but he can go pretty low, but that he has that phenomenally just from all the way up, all the way down. And so it sounds great, and we were going to put it in the
Do you like
Justice.
the Who?
Oh, I actually have so much respect for the Who and just them as musicians. Like I was very much into it in a critical thinking thing because I picked up a course at school called Music Investigation, and I was looking at influence from drummers all the way from Ginger Baker, Ringo Starr, Dave Grohl, Taylor Hawkins.
And what did you make of Keith Moon?
Mitchell, yeah, Mitch Mitchell, Keith Moon, and that whole thing. I just loved getting in there. I felt like I was living in a montage where I had my like Mitch Mitchell day, and I was going, oh my god, and then I had my Keith Moon day, oh my god, and then I was loving it.
I used to play football with a guy called Alan Edwards, who was a publicist, and he worked with a guy called Keith Altham, who used to do PR for the Who.
Okay.
Like back in the day, and they had their PR offices were in Soho, and he said it was like late. I think it was in the 70s. And Alan said I was a young bloke just learning the ropes in the PR business. And Alan had gone out for a long pissy lunch. And up the stairs in the centre in Soho, could hear the stairs clump, 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 clump. And then this vision stands before him. And it's Keith Moon, because he did the PR for the Who. Keith Moon stood there in a green three-piece suit with a green bowler hat and a green umbrella. And he said, is Mr. Altham in? And he said, no, I'm sorry, Keith. Sorry, Mr. Moon. Keith's gone out to lunch. He went, oh, has he? Well, can you please tell him that Keith Moon came for him? And he went over to Keith Altham's desk and turned it upside down and then walked out. Toodle pip.
Oh, that's such fuck you attitude. I love it. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, no, I remember getting stuck. I got stuck into them. I got stuck into all of it. And I had to make a lot of the tracks because they weren't built, and I didn't have the knowledge and technology for all the removing drums. But I had to do a live performance at Haileybury College, and I was like, well, some of these bits, I'm only playing 30-second excerpts. I don't know how to remove the drums or find drumless ones, so I did the real me, and I replayed the entire song on all the instruments. I don't know how, because now I'm fumbling to try and figure out what the parts were. But yeah, that whole part, I did that into a drum solo and played all the parts and instruments. So I got so deep into the Who.
Well, my Who song is 5:15.
Yeah, okay.
Out of my brain on the train.
Yeah.
Just there's just something about that song that does it for me. Plus, I was a big fan of Quadrophenia, the movie. Like, that was big. That was a time when mods and rockers were reconnecting in the 80s in Britain. So, like, you know.
It's very much a scratch your brain song. Yeah, see, for me, talking about your generation scratch, my generation scratches my brain because for me, I've always had that as a song that I know I could riff out and sing because I've always sung and played drums, but I don't have to play during the verses, so to speak. So it's always been one where I've always thought about, you know, playing and stuff. And I just love the idea of like an internal on the stage call and response. I've always loved that as just an idea in a song.
And plus, there's some insane drum parts on that song.
Well, yes, that's also true. Yes.
You know, you just think, is that one person? That's crazy.
Yeah, I remember going to the Met when I was in New York in 2019, and there was a Rock of Ages collection, and it's like a couple of Hendrix guitars. They had a Prince guitar, but it's the Met, so they have everything. But like they had Keith Moon's drums. They had a replica of like the what they perceived to be the initial not the cave in Liverpool.
The cavern.
Yeah, the cavern. Yeah, they and that what they believe to be Ringo's initial drum kit sort of stuff and that sort of thing. And I remember just looking at it and just going, it's crazy to see that after hearing all those things and to sort of for me, it was a bit of a, oh my God, that's crazy to think of it as one person when you hear these things. And I was never around to see them and those sorts of things, but just see
It's funny because I lived in a village in Surrey before we moved to Australia. And at one end of the village, there was a mansion that Ringo Starr lived in. And at the other end of the village, there was a mansion that Eric Clapton lived in. So, and like once every 2 years, they'd get together and do like a jamming session in the local village hall.
Oh, but
it was great. But my mate, one of our good mates, saw Ringo shopping in the local co-op supermarket.
Yeah.
And he went, "Oh, Ringo, I love you." And he went, "No, with all due respect and love and peace, fuck off and buy me baked beans." You know?
I love it. It's one of those things, though. It's like one of the few bands, well, certainly nowadays, where you can't be anyone in the band without being stopped. Whereas now you think about, I remember watching a funny thing with a comedian. He's like, it's the best thing to be Coldplay's bass player because you can walk down the street.
You can travel the world and still go to the shops.
Yeah. And no one knows who the fuck you are. It's sort of thing, and it's that novelty. Whereas that's not the case. Yeah, exactly. Whereas no one knows these.
Yeah.
That was
or
not
one
there.
half of Royal Otis.
Oh yeah, that's true. Oh, one thing your thoughts on to finish the Oasis thing. What are your thoughts on that about them coming back and doing shows and things?
Oh, look, it's positively Shakespearean, that story, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
and that's the thing. It's another teaching moment for artists, which is artists say, "Oh, it's just why can't it just be about the music?" It's never fucking been just about the music.
Yes, that's an ignorant thing to say.
Rock and roll is about it's about music industry doesn't sell music; it sells values.
Yeah,
and part of the value proposition for Oasis were these two like antagonistic brothers who could barely stand the sight of each other.
Yeah.
But when they clicked like a motherfucker and just got into the most unbelievable trance-like rock and roll, like meditation that was just incredible. And they had a superstar quality, a fuck you mentality. And they haven't spoken really for the past 15 years. And I think the idea, once it was first mooted and talked about and leaked, there was this will they, won't they?
Yeah, will they make it part of rehearsals?
Well, exactly. And to be honest, even though they're on sale and sold out, there's still that trepidation is, are they going to turn up? Will they finish a show together? So it's like, as I say, it's as a tale, it's positively Shakespearean, and it's we've been stories of what defined mankind since we've been able to communicate.
Yeah,
that's how we've passed on culture, and that's a brilliant story. Oasis is an amazing story, and a cautionary tale.
Yes.
And it's amazing, and so look, fantastic. I'm fairly certain that the ex-wives, the alimony, the need for a new extension on the house has come into this, and I hear that they're both trousering 50 million quid before they even step on stage.
Yeah,
and good luck to them. You know what? Good luck to them. It's
and I know a lot of people do a lot more for a lot less than to just see Champagne Supernova and hold their boys or their girls and sing it.
It's funny because I absolutely love Oasis as a band, but you can't scrutinise their lyrics too closely.
Yeah,
because they're meaningless. A lot of them are just twaddle, but they sound. I say this to artists when we're talking about songwriting, and I always bring up Oasis. It's good to have songs that mean something. And I judge songs three ways. I judge songs on melody, structure, and messaging. And I think if you're scoring a high 8 in each one of them, you got a hit.
Yep.
Right. And you can be strong in two of them and not the other and still be okay.
Yep. Like
a lot of EDM songs don't, have the messaging is in the genre in some ways.
Yeah.
But it's not, but there's no real great messaging in the lyrics. But in terms of sometimes in terms of messaging and lyrics and what you're trying to get off your chest, sometimes you just got to sing a line that sounds fucking great. Sometimes it's okay to sing a line that doesn't really add to the narrative of that song or what you're trying to get across, but it just sounds fucking good to sing.
Yeah.
And that is mostly Oasis songs. Oasis songs don't really bear, as I say, you can't really pick them apart for any great meaning, but they sound fucking great to sing.
Yeah.
They just sound great.
Absolutely.
Those words in that order with that track sound fucking great.
It's just a great combo. Yeah, I remember when I used to go to school and play tennis with James Rain's daughter, and I didn't really know who that was at the time, but later on, watching interviews and just hearing them talk and stuff, and him saying how embarrassed he was about the song when he says like I got hit by a fender, but I'll soon be on the mender. I'm of the male gender. He's like, this is the most embarrassing lyrical content I've ever fucking written. But he's like, but then I'm at the Palms Crown for a sold out show and everyone's singing it back to me, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's a stupid line, but it's funny, you know.
Well, I have an issue these days because I'm 62 in March, and I love the English language, but it's an evolving concept, language, and sometimes when I'm dealing with a songwriter who might be early 20s, and there's a 40-year age gap between us, and they're expressing themselves in a way that to me sounds lazy and incomplete. And I have to check myself and go, is that a fucked lyric, or am I too old to actually understand the value of the way those words have been put together?
Okay.
And that's not something I'd ever imagined I'd get to. I never imagined I'd get to an age where I didn't understand the value of words.
Yeah,
but I have to constantly check myself about whether a set of words are valuable anymore because I'm so old. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's true though, because like the language thing is very true, and I suppose it's one of those things where you get to a certain you can meet eye to eye on so many things, like you say, and then sometimes something will come up and you'll be like, oh, I forget how young you are, or I forget how much older than me you are, and that is what it is for you.
I mean, look, if you look as a case in point, the I'm a instead of I'm going to.
Oh yeah,
yeah, I'm a
do that.
Yeah, I'm a do that. That's last 10, 15 years. Now that's part of the vernacular now.
Yeah,
and you can see that written down, and you go, okay, I get that. That's kind of reached my hoary old ears.
It's made it to the mountain.
It's
and
made,
you're like,
yeah, and it's like, but it's just, but it's not just that. There's, I work with artists and they're missing words out, and I start to freak because I'm going, they're missing a word there. The idea is missing a word, and they go, no, it'll be fine, and I go, am I having an old moment there?
Do I need a cover?
But it's hard though, because it's like, how do you teach someone when you go, is that fucked or am I too old? Yeah. And that's where I am right now. Yeah. It's scary.
But it's also a bit exciting because it's like,
oh yeah, it's good. But look, but I have to say that to people. I say, look, please tell me to back off, but at least listen to what I've got to say.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I think that's a good piece. You've had many pieces of wisdom today, but like I think one of the things that I think is very wise is that for anyone that's whether they're looking, like especially if they are looking for, if they're looking for some sort of nurturing, mentoring, criticism, advice, just a conversation, you don't have to do it or say yes or whatever, but give the respect of understanding.
Well, better than that is I always say, regard everything I say as an opening offer. That all I'm doing is I'm just putting the cards down. If you want to raise me, let's go there.
Okay,
that's the best thing for me.
And that goes into that answers thing. It's like, that's too fast.
Yeah.
Why is it too fast?
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Or what if we do this? And it's like, I go, look, I come from a record industry where our strike rate was 20%. That's why CDs cost such a lot of money for so many years, because 8 out of 10 things that we invested in fucking failed.
Yeah.
Right? So we only made money off 20% of our releases as major labels, right? Our research and development were our stiff records.
Yeah.
So what the fuck do we know? If we're working on a strike rate of 20%, how knowledgeable can we be?
Yeah.
That means that 8 out of 10 projects that we've stood up in front of the industry and got, this is the next big thing. we've quietly swept it under a carpet 6 months later,
Yeah.
and dropped them.
Yeah.
So please be aware, guys. We don't know this. When someone from the record industry tells you, "I know this," punch them. They fucking don't.
No.
None of us do. But at least let them have their say.
Yeah.
And you be bold enough and invested enough and say, thank you. And what if? Don't say but, say and what if.
Exactly. Yes. And what's next? Yeah.
So just regard everything anyone says as an opening offer.
I love
try
that.
and raise it.
I like that. That's really good. Well, I've loved this. This has been great to have a chat with you and just learn about all things you and just your thoughts on things. Tell me what you want to plug regarding Hey Dicko.
Well, look,
other than the best fucking business cards you'll ever see.
Yeah, look, if I have not put you off over the past hour and a half.
Yeah, if you haven't put me off saying I know fuck all, but you haven't put me off,
Well, why don't we get on the screen and know fuck all together?
Yeah.
But, no, look, I reckon I can help most artists to see their career a little more clearly. I can help them find some of the gaps, some of the areas for improvement. And sometimes, artists will be rocking, but there's something that they need to improve. Sometimes, more often than not, it'll be a total shit show. And look, I'm pretty good at reading the room. I can give you a big hug and really affirm you into some action. Or I can really help you discover the value of some tough love. And I hope I've still got the wisdom to pick what's appropriate in every situation there.
Yeah.
But the main thing is I really feel honoured and privileged turning 62 to be allowed into young artists' lives to talk about something they hold so dear and to encourage them to drop their poverty of ambition and to just grow a little bit more. And that's what Hey Dicko is about. I called it Hey Dicko because for the last 20 years, that's what everyone's been doing when they want free advice. Hey Dicko.
I like that.
What do you reckon? So,
I like that.
look, get to the website, www.heydicko.com.au. It's a bit of a fun website. It's I also offer sessions tuned to your tastes.
Okay, nice.
Mild, zesty, and extra spicy.
I love that.
So if you've got a little bit of masochism in you,
Okay.
and you want Dicko circa 2003 Australian Idol Series 1, and you and your mates fancy a bit of a roast,
Okay.
let's go, brother.
Okay. All right. Just make sure you don't wear anything that doesn't strictly fit you. Sorry.
You fuck one lazy goat. Jesus.
I think we've all been there, but I don't wish to admit that on the airwaves. But no, Dicko, thanks so much for being here and for coming and for having a chat and for giving me, as I said, one of the, if not the best business cards going around. Because
Do people still do business cards your age?
Well, I just gave one before, so I fucking
there you
hope so. But no, it's fridge magnets, so I think they don't do those anymore. I don't know. Well, that's fine. Well, I'll stick this on the fridge. But seriously, you have a lot to offer, and I know that there's a lot of people, Dylan and Jesse have such a strong affinity to how you conduct yourselves, like how they conduct themselves and how you've conducted yourself around them and the things they've learned. And it's just been awesome to be a fly on the wall and to finally have this conversation. And seriously, there are, there's a lot of big, scary words like, legacy and legend and stuff like that. But I was like, seriously, you sit in the category of someone that people will want to pay attention to and will always pay attention to because you're worth paying attention to.
I've really, really loved this. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Well, guys, that is another episode of the Ask Muso podcast. You know the places to find these. It's just another fantastic chat with another fantastic person. So YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts even. That's all the places you can find these. And until next time, I'll see you later.